cyclic. Okay. And now we just applied the standard chain rule of probability distribution. So we know that any probability distribution, whether it is a Bayesian network or not, can always be factorized using chain rule as the product over each xi given all its previous variables, given all variables before xi. So this is just chain rule. And now we can simplify each term in the chain rule based on the local CI, and we obtain this product, which says that this joint distribution can be written as the product of the probability of xi given all the parents of xi. Okay. This is a simple proof, but it's important in the sense that it really sort of gives us confidence on the principled relationship between conditional independencies and factorization. So if I give you a distribution and I assert a particular factorization of the distribution, then just using standard probability rules, I can always infer a set of conditional independencies. But that would be very tedious. What the Bayesian network representation buys us is that without explicitly deriving those conditional independencies from the factorization, we can just read it just by looking at the graph. And that is the visual interpretation advantage that you get by using graphical models to represent your joint distribution. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately for Bayesian network, the local CI rule is not adequate to capture all kinds of conditional independencies which hold among variable sets in a Bayesian network. There is a more complicated rule which is called the D-separation rule, and I will skip this rule, but I just want you to be aware that in a Bayesian network there are conditional independencies which hold, which are not captured through the local CI rule, and there is a more complicated rule which is the D-separation rule, which is actually complete in the sense that it captures all possible conditional independencies which hold in the Bayesian network. So this was a sort of a brief overview of the representation issues of a Bayesian network, in the sense that how does a Bayesian network express the relationship between the graph and the set of conditional independencies and the factorization of the distribution. So these are these three components we have. We have a graph structure, we have a set of conditional independencies, and we have a factorization. So each of these networks, Bayesian networks and MRFs, express the relationship among these three things differently, and we just saw how Bayesian network does it. And there are, of course, many popular Bayesian networks. Most of you must have heard about hidden Markov models. So hidden Markov models, these are also a kind of Bayesian network where, and these have applications in speech recognition, also in information extraction. So as the name implies, in a hidden Markov model, you have some hidden variables. So this, I have sort of shown an example hidden Markov model where the hidden variables are the y variables, and these variables have a Markovian relationship with variables just before it. So for example, you will say that y5 is directly influenced by y4, but y5 is conditionally independent of y3 given y4. There is correlation between y5 and y3, but it becomes independent of y3 when you know the value of y4. So that is the Markov. That is what gives it the name Markov. Okay. And then the observed variables are the xi's. So you have for every hidden state variable, you have an observed variable. Every state variable yi has an observed variable xi. So in speech recognition, for example, you would the xi would typically be an observed audio signal, and the YI would be the phoneme which the audio signal represents. And in typical applications, you have an observed audio sequence, and your goal is to recognize the word, and you start by recognizing the word by first recognizing the parts of the word or the phonemes of the word, and the phonemes are represented as the Y variables. So the Y variables are discrete in this example, but the X variables are continuous, and in fact they are not even scalar, because an audio form will have multiple components, so it is a multidimensional continuous variable, multidimensional vector of multiple continuous variables. So in information extraction, the Xi's are, say, the words that you have seen, and the Yi's might be the type of the word, whether the word is a person name, a company name, which is the entity type of the word. Okay. Another related very popular Bayesian network which some of you might have heard of is Kalman filters. So in Kalman filter, the main difference with hidden Markov models is that the state variables are continuous. Bayesian networks are also used a lot in various topic modeling applications. I think you must have heard of that in yesterday's talk on text classification, topic models. And some of the early Bayesian networks, in fact, arose in medicine. So there was a very famous Bayesian network which was called the QMR network. It expands to Quick Medical Reference Network, where you have nodes representing diseases and another set of nodes representing symptoms, and the idea is to use the symptoms to create a posterior probability distribution over the likely disease that a person might be suffering from. So it is actually a very accurate medical diagnosis network. Oops. So now we are done talking about Bayesian networks, and I am going to go to undirected graphical models, and which are also called Markov random fields. Any questions? Okay. So in an undirected graphical model, your graph G, as the name implies, is an undirected graph, and unlike for the case of the directed graph, there is no condition on what the graph can be. Okay, I have, I think, a question, so I will take that. Yes. Hello? Yeah. Yes.
The question is related to the construction of the graph itself. So, for instance, given the graph, I can talk about these dependencies and independencies. But when I do not have the graph, so essentially my first stage is a network with all possible connections. So how, like, the way I reach the conclusion is I find out the independencies and then keep removing edges. Is that the way? I mean, for instance, in our example, age, experience, income, it's fairly intuitive, and someone with knowledge of the domain can actually give us an hint about it. Okay, that's my question one. And question two is, I cannot really understand the intuition behind our example. For instance, the income is independent of age given experience. So essentially, what this means is that the experience contains the information of age, which leads to income. I mean, is this the intuition example?
Yes, that is the intuition, but let me, yeah. So are you, okay, I don't know whether I should be talking on the cell phone or, okay. Okay, so there were two very relevant good questions. So the first question was whether, I mean, how do we learn the graph structure? So that is in fact a very hard problem, and for the case of Bayesian networks, for arbitrary Bayesian networks, it is actually a sort of an intractable search problem. And I will be touching upon it a bit towards the end of the talk, but the topic is so huge that I will not be able to do justice to it. But the main idea of learning the graph structure is basically to use the data to make sure that the conditional independencies which are present in the data are expressed in the graph. But in terms of algorithmics, it is very complicated. You know, the statistical answer is very simple. You want the Bayesian network to represent the conditional independencies which hold in the data. So we'll be talking about, suppose if you had a perfect oracle which could answer conditional independencies query crisply with yes/no answers, then it is easy to learn the Bayesian network. But if you have to get those answers from data and there might be errors in the answers, then the problem becomes very complicated. So that was the first question and my answer to that. And then the second question was that in the age and experience, what was the interpretation of the edges? So actually your interpretation was perfect. You know, the way you said that, the reason we can eliminate the edge from age to income is because whatever part of age influences income is captured in experience. Okay, so that's why we don't have the direct edge from age to income. Any other questions?
No, is there? Madam, are you able to hear?
Okay. Yeah, now I can hear the audios.
Okay, thank you. Now, another question is there.
Okay, now it feels much better. Earlier I was finding it somewhat uncomfortable to be talking into sort of a very, very quiet room because my students here are certainly not this quiet.
Okay, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So the question is about this Markov property. So because of which any state in HMM is actually dependent on the previous state only. Now if I have to model a scenario where a state is actually dependent on multiple previous and the state previous to that or the next state, what kind of modeling technique would be helpful?
Yeah, so actually, so I assumed everybody heard the question. Okay, so the hidden Markov model, this is what I represented is a first order hidden Markov model, and you can sort of, if you say that I am creating a kth order hidden Markov model, then you can connect a state to k previous parents. So that is allowed. It will just make your network more complicated, your potentials more complicated, and if you want to connect a node with a node after it, you could do that. It's just going to make your network more complicated. But then you have to, of course, make sure that you do not have cycles. So of course, if you connect, for a future node, it does not make sense without introducing cycles. Okay.
Hi, ma'am. Next question is related to how we can relate this Bayesian networks to text mining. So in text mining, can we use approach like bag of words, where number of features is very large? So in that case, will there be problem in the representation of Bayesian networks?
So if you were trying to, so let me make sure that I understood the question. So the question was, how can we use Bayesian network for text classification applications where the number of features is very large? Okay, so if you have a very large number of features, say suppose if you try to do text classification using a naive Bayes classifier, then anyway you go with the assumption that the features or the word occurrences are independent of each other given the class label. So you can always think of this particular naive Bayes classifier as a Bayesian network where you have a parent node corresponding to the class variable, and each and this parent, there is only one parent node corresponding to the class variable, which can take as many values as the number of classes, and this node is connected to each of the words. And what the naive Bayes classifier does is finds the probability of the occurrence of each word given the class label. So there, the fact that you have a large number of features does not matter much, because you are still, the Bayesian network is simple. But if you want to actually capture correlation among variables, then then there is this question of how do you actually also learn the correlations. It turns out that if you just want to capture sort of say pairwise correlations, you can still do it somewhat efficiently. I will not be able to cover this topic, but it if you send me email, I can give you pointers to how to do it efficiently.
One more question related to that. So in case of topic modeling, in case of topic modeling, we have features and then we try to extract topic and then we classify it. So it's like two-layered kind of approach.
So when you do topic modeling, then the graph structure is somewhat more complicated.
So like for one text classification, you said that naive Bayes would be way. So for topic modeling, what would be efficient? So we can't use naive Bayes in that case. So any other algorithm which would be helpful in that scenario?
So actually, the last part of your sentence kind of.
So I was saying that for direct text classification, you said that naive Bayes is the ideal algorithm. So for topic modeling, which would be an ideal algorithm if you want to use let's say something graphical model?
I'm sorry, there is a lot of this booming sound which is coming.
Yes, the echo is going on. Now the question is that what
there is a lot of
method we can use in topic modeling. In case of text classification, naive Bayes is a good method. Then what can he use in topic modeling?
feature correlation, how to model feature correlation in topic modeling?
Yeah, exactly. Feature correlation in topic modeling.
Feature correlation in topic modeling. I think the same method should work. The same idea should work. So essentially, I'm thinking about the learning problem. You're asking me that question, right? How will you learn the feature correlation? Whatever I was referring to, but I have not described in terms of learning feature correlation for naive Bayes. I think that should also work for topic modeling. I cannot think right now what might fail, but I have to think about it often.
Thank you.
But we might have to do something to reduce the echo. It's actually somewhat directed graphical models. Okay, sorry, I should share my desktop again. Okay, so we'll talk about undirected graphical models. So in an undirected graphical model, as I said, we have an arbitrary graph where the edges do not have any directions associated with them. So these are useful when you are trying to represent interaction among variables which are symmetric. So the first and the most popular kind of such undirected graphical models came about when physicists were trying to model interaction among atoms in a solid molecular structure. So there, so you have, say, variables, and the variables, so the atoms which are close together, they influence each other in terms of what spin state they will be in. But there is no directionality attached to the influence. So in such cases, it just does not make sense to add edges to represent their dependencies, and it's more natural to represent that through an undirected edge. A second major application, say, is in image segmentation in various kind of image analysis problems. And what you see on this slide here, this grid, think of it as each variable representing a pixel in an image. And your goal is to assign to each pixel a label which denotes the object to which this pixel belongs. So this will therefore have application in segmenting an object, segmenting an image into various object boundaries. So in this application also, the direction of edges does not make sense. Also in information extraction, I will be presenting examples where it makes more sense to think of the dependency structure as being undirected. In fact, for most of the applications that I have worked with involving extraction problems, the graph structure is almost always undirected. Now, undirected graphical models have sort of a simpler conditional dependency structure compared to Bayesian networks, but they have a more complicated potential structure, and it's sort of difficult to understand them intuitively. So first, in the first round, just sort of go with the statements as just definitions, and they will not be as easy to interpret as for the case of Bayesian networks. In a Bayesian network, the potentials were conditional probabilities, so they made a lot of sense. Whereas in the case of MRFs, the potentials are just some arbitrary non-negative values that you attach to combination of variables. So when you have defined your undirected graph, you can identify the sets of variables which form a clique. For example, in this grid graph, the cliques correspond to the pairs of variables which are directly connected by an edge. So in this graph we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 plus, so we have 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. That many, actually maybe 4 plus 3 plus 6, 7, some 13, 14 edges here, okay? So, so that is the number of cliques that you have in this graph. And corresponding to each clique, you are allowed to have a potential. And this potential cannot be interpreted as any probability terms. It's just some function which returns a positive value corresponding to an assignment of values to the members in that clique. And now, because these potentials are not necessarily conditional probabilities of any kind, they can be scaled in any way. In order to define a valid distribution, you have to normalize the distribution. So in any mention of an undirected graphical model, you will have this annoying Z term, which is the normalizer. This is because it's a normalizer, it has to be equal to the sum of the values of the denominator over all possible assignment of values to the n variables. This Z normalizer has a name, it's called a partition function. And remember, we are considering cases where n is large. So just computing the partition function is going to be extremely difficult in terms of computational load. So over each possible, if each variable n takes 2 possible values, then you will have 2 to the power n possible terms to sum over in order to just compute the partition function. So this is one point of departure from Bayesian networks which makes undirected graphical models intractable in the sense that in order to just compute the probability of an assignment, you will have to compute the value of the normalizer, which could, if you do it in a direct way, it could take an exponential amount of time. So that's one thing that we have to watch out for. So here is an example of an undirected graphical model. As I said earlier, consider this as a grid graph, a toy grid graph that would arise in analyzing an image. So this is a very, very tiny image consisting of 3 by 3 pixels. In practice, you would have something like 1000 by 1000 pixels, and you are talking about 10 to the power 6 variables, 1 million variables, whereas here we are just dealing with 9 variables. And each variable, let's say, takes two possible values. It takes a value 1 if it is part of the foreground, and it takes a value 0 if it's part of the background. So we want to use an MRF to find the foreground pixels in this image. So in order to do that, we have to now quantify this distribution. So we will quantify the distribution through potentials. So typically there are you can define potentials only over the maximal clicks, but that very often turns out to be inefficient. So typically you might end up defining potentials over smaller subsets of variables also. In this case, the first thing that we are going to do is define potentials corresponding to singleton variables, and these have a name. These are called node potentials. So if you consider, say, the first variable y1, its potential function I am going to denote as psi1 because it's over this singleton click consisting of just one variable 1. And this variable can take two possible values. So for the value of 0, we say that the potential function takes a value 1. And when y1 is equal to 1, then the potential is 1. Similarly, for the second variable y2, we have this potential function. So you can also think of this potential function as a table when your variables are discrete. So this way we have defined these 9 node potentials, and then we will define edge potentials. Very often the edge potentials are, for all edges in the graph, you might share an edge potential. So in this case, for each of these 14 edges in the graph, we will have the same potential. Therefore, there is no click that, there is no subscript corresponding to the click ID here. And since the edge potential is over 2 variables, this function will take as arguments the assignment of values. So psi 0, 0, it means that when it is applied on this edge, then when y1 is 0 and y2 is 0, what is the value of the potential? So here we can arbitrarily call it 3. And when both are 1, then it is 5. And when they take opposite values, we say that these are just value 1. So this is a very typical scenario in image analysis situation where you are using the edge potential to capture this intuitive notion that pixels which are close by are likely to take the same label. They will either both be part of the foreground or they will both be part of the background. The number of boundary pixels is actually a very small part of the number of neighboring pixels in a typical image, and because of that this edge potential makes sense. So once you have defined these potentials over singleton variables and pairs of variables, the joint distribution over the 9 variables can just be written as the product over these node potentials over each of the variables and the edge potentials over the edges. So this is an example of an MRF that you have defined, and of course here you have to normalize this distribution because the values that I have assigned to these potentials, if you sum them up, they will definitely not sum up to 1. So you have to calculate the value of z. Okay. So we found that the potentials are non-intuitive, but the conditional independencies in a MRF are very simple. So it's the first very simple rule, which is actually so there are conditional independencies you can define in various ways on the graph, and all of them are very intuitive. So the first rule says that every variable yi is conditionally independent of all its non-neighbors given its neighbors. So unlike for the case of Bayesian network, where the local conditional independency said that a variable yi can only be conditionally independent of its non-descendant given its parents, here there is no notion of parents. Only for every variable you have a set of neighbors, and you can say that the variable becomes independent of all its non-neighbors given the neighbors. So the neighbors kind of shield a variable from the influence of all other variables. Okay, an example here. So if you consider variable y1 has two neighbors, y2 and y4. So you can say that y1 is independent of all the remaining 6 variables given variable y2 and y4, its two neighbors. Okay. Then the second kind of conditional independency that you can read from the graph structure, this is called pairwise conditional independency. It says that every pair of variables which are not directly connected, they are independent of each other given all the, they will become independent of each other given all other variables. This rule does not hold for a Bayesian network. So you should, this is a very important point, that it is true that for variables which are directly connected by an edge, there does not exist any subset which can make them conditionally independent. And for variables which are not directly connected by an edge, there will exist some set of variables which will make them independent, both in the case of Bayesian networks and in the case of undirected graphical models. But for the case of undirected graphical models, such a subset is very easy to identify. It's basically all the variables. But that is not the case for the case of Bayesian networks. If you try this rule, you will make some wrong assertions for a Bayesian network. And then the third one, which is the simplest, is that this is the global CI rule. In the case of Bayesian network, the global CI rule, the one which captures all conditional independencies, was this funny deseparation thing which I did not go over also because I said it was complicated. But here it just says that if you have a subset of variables z which disconnects x and y in the graph, then x and y is conditionally independent of y given z. So in the graph, for example here, if you look at this graph, then you will find that y1, y2 and y3, they are separated from y7, y8 and y9 if you remove the chain of graphs, the vertices in between. So therefore this conditional independence holds. And this global CI, as the name implies, it's complete because all possible conditional independencies which hold in this, among this set of 9 variables,